Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast lovers, and welcome to the 99th episode of the Shipping Podcast. You will be meeting the brain behind the Opening Oceans Conference. Her name is Sofia Fürstenberg Stott. She is a Swedish woman working in Denmark for a Norwegian client. She is a true Scandinavian, collaborating female leader. And I'm so happy that she made it possible for me to interview and record the 8 previous episodes when she invited me to the Opening Oceans Conference in Copenhagen in May. This interview took place 1 week later. I realized that she wouldn't be able to sit down and talk to me after being exhausted by all the things that happened at the Opening Oceans Conference. So this interview was recorded on May 17th in Malmö in Sweden. So, without further ado, this is Sofia Fürstenberg Stott for you. Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Sofia Fürstenberg Stott, and I have a new surname since not a long time ago. I have been in the shipping industry since 2006, when I started with DNV, today DNVGL. And that's when I realized that as a chemical engineer, there is a lot in shipping. But I realized after some years that I also needed to understand the business. So today I have also an MBA in shipping and logistics and have been innovation manager with Maersk for 5 years. But now I'm doing something much more fun. And I'm creating conferences and interaction with the shipping industry at NorShipping in Oslo.
So if we go back a little bit, you are a Swedish lady working for a Norwegian company in Denmark.
Yes, I'm a true Scandinavian.
I'm so impressed because you speak Danish. And you're married to an Englishman or two?
Yeah, he's Irish. He's an Irish pirate. Well, in the best sense.
Where did you study?
I studied in Lund, chemical engineering in Lund.
In Sweden?
Yeah. And I came to Denmark via Norway, via Singapore. So...
Hold on. This is a true global career. We need to talk about this.
Yeah.
So you took your exams in Lund as an engineer, chemical engineer.
Chemical engineer.
Why did you choose that?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to go into acting. And I had a date for an audition at the theatre, or the Scene School Academy in Gothenburg. But at that time, I was doing 10 months military in northern Sweden.
This gets more and more interesting per second, I think.
So I was doing basic training, which in Sweden is called lumpen, as a volunteer, because at that time it wasn't compulsory for women. But I decided that's what I wanted to do. And they didn't give me leave for audition. They thought that was quite hilarious that I asked. So when I finished my 10 months up there, I had a new direction set for me, and I wanted to work in the environmental sphere. I wanted to save the world, and with the limited understanding I had of the world, or whatever, as a 19-year-old, I thought that the door to that was to move as far away in Sweden as I could. So I've moved to Lund. And I wasn't accepted to the environmental engineering that just started that year, but I was accepted to the chemical engineering. And there I made sure to get a degree that I focused on environmental protection, toxicology, biochemistry, environmental impact, etc., etc. And so it was with those credentials I was invited eventually to DNV to work with environmental aspects of shipping. So I understood shipping from the sense of what takes place in the engine room, what is the combustion. I knew combustion from my chemical engineering perspective. I knew about the exhaust, knew about the discharges. I had my master thesis within ecotoxicology. At the time I started in DNV, the newest thing was ballast water treatment systems. And they didn't have many people who could understand the chemical impact or the toxicology impact of that. And so I was set to be the middleman between the suppliers who wanted to get the approval, the type approval, and the approval in the IMO. So I sat there reading through performance reports and could assess whether they was of sufficient scientific quality or not. And then I was set to evaluate performance of sulfur treatment systems as well, like scrubbers. So I really came into shipping from my chemical engineering background.
And when was this in time?
2006.
And you were then based in Oslo?
Yeah, I took, and this is a funny story, I took the ferry to the interview because at the time I thought that was the cheapest way to get to Oslo. At the time, it was the cheapest way, and I was in between jobs.
So from where to Oslo?
At that time, it had Helsingborg as access point, and I arrived to the interview in the morning, and they asked how my flight was. And I said the trip was great, but I came with the boat. They couldn't believe me, and they were laughing and said, "Really, you took the boat?" I'm like, "Yeah. I like boats," I said. And I got the job.
Yeah, that was a nice story. Did you go back by boat?
I did, yeah.
How long does that take?
It's like an overnight train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they stopped Helsingborg since then.
Yeah, it goes from Copenhagen nowadays, yeah.
So how long were you in DNV GL or DNV at that time?
I was for over 3 years in Oslo, and then I was given the opportunity to start up a new service portfolio in Singapore within green shipping. So I flew to Singapore.
Lucky you didn't take the boat.
Didn't take the boat this time, although that would have been exciting, actually.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I was working for them in Singapore for 2 years, and they had decided to establish a green shipping service portfolio over there. And that was a great adventure, and I really learned a lot. And to be in Singapore, you have the ships all around you all the time. You see them every day, and you really understand that shipping is this big shipping hub, and it's a very important part of moving the global trade, global economy. And Singapore is a small island and can sometimes be a bit claustrophobic, but at the same time, the amazing benefits in Singapore is that you are never more than 20 minutes away from anybody. And I had an open door to all shipping companies and to Maritime Port Authority and to all the senior management everywhere. And that was amazing.
Can I ask, how old were you at that time when you were there?
No. This was 2010, 2012. So I was going on 32.
My point being that you were a rather young woman, and you were in Singapore, and you were working in the maritime industry, and you were an engineer, and you were talking about the new stuff, the green stuff. How were you received?
Well, it was, how do they say, everybody knows the monkey, but the monkey doesn't know anyone. I got a huge network very fast because I was very visible in the sense that I was fairly young, I was European, and I was in a position where I could also have an opinion working for DNV GL as an advisor. So I was invited as as a person with a message. I was speaking at conferences, I was moderating, and I really kind of grew my competencies in that field.
So you were not there at the same time as Stine Mundal then?
I think she arrived maybe a short while after I left. Yes.
I've spoken to her before, and I asked her the same question. She said the same thing, that everyone respected her because they realized that she knew what she was talking about.
Yeah. No, but absolutely. I experienced a very trusting and open environment. And Singapore is also a fantastic innovation hub. And I think those qualities are so important, that they trust you if you show that you have knowledge. Your seniority is maybe of less importance. And I think this is a fundamental asset.
So then you took a plane back to Scandinavia?
Eventually I did, yeah. Yeah, I wanted to come back to reality, honestly. After 2 years, I felt that I was in La La Land. No, but I missed the seasons. I got heartbroken when people were telling me that their flowers were blossoming after the winter, that there were leaves on the trees. And in Singapore, you have more or less the same season. And I felt that I needed to get back to reality. And Singapore is also a place where the pace is very fast. And I come from the north of Sweden, and
so you grew old in 2 years.
yeah, maybe I grew a bit old, yeah. And also I felt that I started to forget when things happened, because I had no hooks to hang them on. I couldn't remember if it was autumn or winter, or because it was always summer.
Yeah, and where you come from, it's always winter, in my view. Okay, so where did you land?
I landed in Copenhagen. So I decided to leave DNVGL, and I was offered a position it was called Innovation Portfolio Manager, but I think it's more true to call me an innovation manager as well as an intrapreneur, because we started a new section, a new department to develop innovation competencies in Maersk and develop an innovation roadmap, but actually only inside technology development, which in hindsight maybe looked a bit weird. We were not dealing with business innovation. We were only doing improvements of the assets, you could say. So that's where I landed. And so suddenly I was at the headquarters in the biggest shipping company in the world. And it's been a fantastic learning, both good and bad, but fantastic learning. That was real. So I really got what I asked for. I wanted to come back to reality, and for sure that's what I did.
I don't know if I can ask that, but what kind of innovations? Was it new technology, or was it the digitalization? Was it you were a little bit before that time?
We were. Yeah, the digitalization had not really taken on stream by then. We were really working to kind of find ways to operate the ship more energy efficient, to reduce the environmental costs for compliance, to look at new fuel options, to look at new propulsion options, look at new hull fouling solutions. And we were also engaging in more long-term, more visionary projects as well. And not least, trying to establish a innovation network, working with academia, working with the industry sector, working with startups and so on. And innovation is not just about coming up with a great idea. And there is so much to do with structure and process and roadmaps and whatnot. And
culture, maybe.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that is a long journey, which I also learned to discover.
So how long were you with Maersk?
5 years.
And then what?
And then I started my own company, as you do.
Yes. I know.
Maersk decided for a different direction, so I thought it was a good opportunity for me to see how I could use my knowledge and my network as an independent consultant. But I was picked up immediately by NorShipping, and I am still with them. But last year I was offered to help them to deliver a concept exhibition. And so I was faced with a very exciting opportunity to take a PowerPoint presentation and turn it into an exhibition hall filled with message, filled with a conference program, with disruptive solutions. And so that was fun. I was having a lot of fun. Yeah. And being used to deliver when the ask is maybe not very concrete and when the timeline is short and so on. I think I learned that in Maersk. So I was not uncomfortable taking on that task, and I just enjoyed it and had fun.
But you never moved to Norway?
No, because I like it so much in Copenhagen. And I also discovered that with my Danish network and my Norwegian network and my Swedish network, I can maybe also take a role of a Scandinavian bridge maker. And so I went to the office of Danish shipping and suggested that it was a good idea to see if I could have a desk there. And they were so kind to agree on that. So that's my office today.
So they got a Swedish woman who is working for a Norwegian company undercover in Denmark.
Yeah, it's. I think it's very much trust-based, and I'm very appreciative.
Yeah, I'm joking.
For that.
Of course. I mean, we talk a lot about collaboration, and you are truly collaborating in that sense.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, well, it inspires me, and I try to find those pathways.
So how do you see the future for shipping in general?
Well, now you come to the big questions, Lena. For sure, we will see a lot of change. We will see new business models developing. We will see totally new actors coming on stream. I think with the agreement in the IMO now to reduce the CO2 footprint by 50% by 2050, that will open new doors for new fuels, for new ship types, and not least also for new collaborations. And we have the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. I think we will be better and better to discover how they can be tools for interesting business opportunities. Digitalization, you mentioned before, of course, this will have a big impact, and automation will have a big impact. And the macroeconomics in the world will have a big impact. I think you often hear that shipping will always exist because we will always continue to trade goods. I agree to that, but I think we will see big changes.
Do you see the shipping industry be prepared for that?
You know, I have seen a fantastic ability to react fast to change. That I think the shipping industry, they can change fast. But and if they are going to do that and still have the position they have today, I don't think that they are sufficiently prepared. So they have shown that they are fast to adapt, but that doesn't mean that they are prepared for the change ahead of them.
So what can we do about that?
You ask so difficult questions, Lena. What can we do about that? Well, NorShipping launched a new conference just a couple of weeks ago, the Opening Oceans Conference. And we did that because we see that we need to stop with compartmentalizing the different economic activities at sea and look at it from a more system perspective and seek new collaborations and new collaborative business models to drive economic development and growth, but at the same time doing what we can to ensure healthy and sustainable oceans. And where the traditional business models of shipping needs to change or at least be adjusted. And where we need to explore more synergies between the different ocean activities taking place and more overarching collaborations. And that's very exciting and indeed very complex, but I think that will be necessary.
I had the pleasure of participating in your Opening Oceans conference, and hopefully people have listened to interviews that I made there. And I found it extremely interesting to be in the think tank. What was the thought behind that?
Yeah, the think tank was
it was an aquarium.
Yeah, we really put you in a tank. Yeah, we thought that was quite fun. Well, so we wanted to have industry experts around the table, but with very different angles to a problem. And so we predefined a kind of a case. The one you were participating in had to do with the need for innovation networks. And so the idea was that we would let this roundtable of experts dwell on these challenges and explore opportunities on this topic for an hour and a half, and where we now have this exciting task to condense the thought work that has been created and see how NorShipping can continue to facilitate an ongoing discussion and bring that forward to some sort of conclusion or a next step at the main conference of NorShipping next year. But we received so much enthusiasm and positive feedback about the concept as such. So we have almost decided to also further explore the concept of think tank also again at NorShipping next year.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to meet people that I don't usually talk to. It's a little bit like everyone is talking about the filter bubbles you've got in your Facebook. You only befriend people that you agree with and that you know and so on. So in a way, it opened my mind because I met with people that I don't usually talk to, and we discussed things that felt important for me. Now I'm giving you feedback, but that is not something that I've seen in many places in the maritime industry.
Right, right.
I have some few more ideas, but let's get back to them afterwards.
Yeah.
How do we get the maritime industry, the shipping industry, more visible to the general public?
Yes. How do we do that? I think to the general public, we need to bring it down to a level that makes sense for them. A couple of years ago, I was trying to explain to my then 5-year-old niece what I did at work. And I told her the story of how her jogging shoes have traveled on a ship all the way from China to the port in Stockholm, and or maybe actually possibly to the port of Gothenburg, but
of course,
eventually ending up in a store. And she looked at me and was silent for a few seconds, and then she laughed and said, "Well, Sofia, that's crazy." But it was my best attempt to tell. Well, so anyway, maybe a stupid example, but I think we need to bring it down to issues that make sense for them. What will happen to what they pay for goods? What will happen to the access? Why is it important to talk about trade embargoes? What will that do to them and their economy? What is their impact on supporting sustainable development? How can they be a more responsible consumer? What are the tools we can give them? Why is the EU important? I don't know. I think we just need to bring it down to their level. And then from a recruitment perspective, because that's another side of it, social media, of course, is an obvious here. Yeah, and telling stories, and going down to the person, to tell stories about like I do now.
I was just thinking about that. Yeah, you're just describing what we're doing right now. No, but in a way, I want to discuss this with you because I know you would understand what I'm thinking about. I have interviewed now 85 people, and I have put the same 5 questions to them that you have got.
Okay.
And this question, how do we become more visible? It's important for me because I think, as you do, that more people need to know about shipping. I mean, we've got the recruitment question. We need the brightest minds to come and help us with our developments, and we will be competing with everyone else. We need the politicians to understand what we're doing because they are taking the decisions.
Yeah.
And that has an impact on us, the regulators. And we are so proud. We know so much and we are so passionate, but we never tell anyone else.
Yeah, and from a Swedish perspective, Sweden is not a big shipping nation. But I think we need to be better at connecting the dots. We need to be better to show next generation, for example, if they are interested in artificial intelligence, if they are interested in blockchain, if they are interested in smart materials, what is the path to eventually explore the shipping industry through that channel?
But who is responsible to do this? This is what I've been trying to find out with 85 people.
Right.
Where should we lay that responsibility?
I think that I need to think about that question.
I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I felt like, because, every stakeholder in transporting goods from one side of the world to the other side have their own business. And most of, for instance, ship owners, they might not see that what they are doing is so cool.
Yeah, I think we need more people like the late Hans Rosling.
Yes.
We need people to tell stories that they can connect to. I really think that's the way to go, to use people as ambassadors to make other people excited. But the responsibility as such should be elsewhere, because there needs to be financial support for that.
But everyone I ask looks upon me like, I don't know. And I mean...
Well, are they still called Vinnova?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they could play a role here.
But why would they do that in a global...
I thought we talked about Sweden.
No, we're talking globally. I met 85 people from international shipping arena.
Yeah, well, I think... well, it's an interesting question because I from a global perspective, who sits on global responsibility? Then we almost come to the UN then, or where are we going with this?
Yeah, it could be UN, it could be IMO, it could be trade organizations, it could be I don't know, but everyone says it's not their responsibility.
Right. Well, having worked so much with identifying mutual value gain when I approach other actors for collaboration, I think this is where we also have to start. What's the value for you? What's the value for me? Let's see if we can do something. And so maybe base it on value drivers rather than responsibilities.
But who will instigate that first to say, let's see if we can? Because who will be gaining? I mean, we as an industry will be gaining if we raise the profile of the entire industry and got the general public and politicians and other people to know what we are doing.
Yeah.
But who will start that? I'm sorry if I'm being difficult. There's not a lot of people that I discuss this with.
Maybe IMO is not a bad idea. Maybe, but IMO is policy organization, and so they need to change their remit a little bit. Then
I'm not sure they will.
No.
We can just leave it.
Maybe the Maersk Foundation, huh?
Is there a foundation? Okay. Did you have a role model growing up?
Astrid Lindgren.
Maybe you need to tell about her for people who doesn't know.
Well, she was what I had instead of a grandmother. Astrid Lindgren was writing books for children primarily, Pippi Longstocking and those kinds of characters. I had a tape recorder with her reading her stories. She has a message that has followed me, and that is sometimes you need to do things even though you're scared, because if you don't do those things, you're nothing more than a piece of dirt. And that when I have been faced with a situation that scares me, for example, being offered to move to the other side of the world was quite scary. I went there on my own and I hadn't seen much of Asia before then. But when I got that question, I also said to myself that I will not turn this offer down because I'm scared. I will turn it down because I'm saying yes to something else. And that has given me that kind of attitude to facing my fear has been very helpful, because you never know what opportunities will stand in front of you. The only kind of power you have is to make your decision. And maybe that's a message I can send to any young listeners, to always look for the good reason to turn opportunities down, because it takes effort to be brave, but you will also have your reward.
Who would you be interested in listening to in the next episode of the Shipping Podcast?
Ooh, well, can you get... I would like to hear Jeff Bezos in Amazon to talk about his ambitions with getting into freight trade. Can you get him?
I'm not sure. But you're not the first one who is asking for him, so
Right.
We just have to get him to listen to the Shipping Podcast first. And then he can hear that there are so many people who wants to listen to him. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sofia, for taking the time to speak to me.
Thank you, Sofia, for sharing your thoughts. I'm sorry if you felt like I was putting you on the spot, but I'm really trying to find out the answer to my questions. Sofia may sound very nice and timid and like a really low-key person, but I promise you, Sofia is a force to be reckoned with. I met her last week again, and we had so much to discuss outside a podcast. Right now, I am preparing my 100th episode. I cannot believe that I have actually recorded and made available 100 episodes for my audience. I never could have imagined this to happen. And I think that it's important that I make sort of a summing up for myself and maybe also for my audience. And that I will do in the next episode. I will share what I have learned as a podcaster, which was totally new to me when I started. And I have also learned a new side of our industry that we maybe not think so much about, and that is the media industry and the event industry, and how we in our industry spend our marketing budgets. So I will have to go back to the drawing board. I've got so many things and loose ends that I need to gather and make them understandable for you as a listener. Thank you for listening to me and maybe supporting my view for the shipping industry in this century. If you want to really support me financially, I've got a Patreon account as well. So you look for patreon.com/shippingpodcast if you want to do the financial support. Otherwise, my inbox is always open for everyone that has got comments or just shout-outs for me, and that is hello@shippingpodcast.com. I have received a few ones that I am now keeping in my heart, and some of them I will be sharing with you in the next episode. So I will say, as usual, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a shipping podcast available and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.